We begin with Psalm 34. Mi haish hechafetz haim Ohev yamim lirotov Mi haish hechafetz haim Ohev yamim lirotov Netzor leshon chamera Usfatecha midaber mirma Sur merav asetov Bakesh shalom verodfehu Mi haish החפץ חיים. אוהב ימים, אוהב ימים לראות טוב.
It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream to be and oh to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. It's my honor to be here today to remember our dear Bob Schwartz. I'm here, Josh Caruso, with my colleague, Cantor Vladimir Lappin from Anshe Chesed Fairmount Temple. And we're here to comfort you, Bob's family, we love so deeply and so dearly. We ask, dear God, this day, be with us. Wrap us in your presence like a blanket. Comfort our saddened souls. May the grieving family find solace in the love they share, in the devotion of friends and community, and in the knowledge of your sheltering presence. God, console us all in the faith that Bob lives on among us in every family celebration and each of our smiling memories, in the legacy of his generosity of spirit, in his devotion to family and friends. Dear God, Shomea Tefillot, hear our prayers. Find favor in this child of Israel, a beloved husband, father, grandfather, brother, uncle, and so much more, cherished and admired. Shower your presence upon him, and may he be welcomed into your presence forever. And we say, Amen. Family members would like to share some memories of Bob. We're going to begin with Bob's daughter Karen, and followed by a number of grandchildren who would like, just a few, to share their love and memories. Karen?
I lost my dad, and lost is the right word, because I feel so lost. My dad was so much to me, so much of who I am, so much of the person that I have become, so much of my journey to be here now. My dad was my companion. We took adventures together. We shared exploration and journeys and learning and fun. From the time as a child when I would go to Mount Sinai Hospital with him so he could make his rounds, to our visits to Planned Parenthood so he could complete paperwork, I went with him. From our trip to New York to learn about our Jewish heritage, to the Cleveland Orchestra concerts at Severance Hall, to our visit to the Basketball Hall of Fame just to explore, to the annual Browns games where we would share a thermos of hot chocolate, to being with me while I watched my dogs go over the Rainbow Bridge. My dad was by my side at the courthouse for my divorce and sat through the whole long process of watching the rabbi write my get. My dad was there. Lots of people now are talking about quiet quitting when people leave their jobs silently without fanfare. My dad was always quiet loving, as he didn't always tell me or hug me, but he showed his love through his actions, his caring, his listening, and his understanding. He didn't tell me that I was loved. He lived it. He showed it through his actions and behaviors and presence. Through my choices and challenges and obstacles, my dad was there. He taught me to believe in myself and all that I could accomplish. His faith and quiet love gave me strength and belief in whatever I wanted to attempt. And now, as I feel so lost at my loss, I know that all the lessons that he taught me, all the strength that he gave me, all the faith that he instilled in me will help me find my way. But right now, I just feel so lost at my loss.
Death is difficult for the living. It's never easy to say goodbye to a loved one forever, even if the death isn't sudden or unexpected. When our grandfather, whom we called Papa, was diagnosed with cancer, we were reminded of our finite time together, and we spent that remaining time wisely. Now, as one of his family members, I've been asked to say a few words about him at the epilogue of his story. This is to be one piece of the myriad reflections from his family, a narrative capstone to his life. But what could I possibly say that would do justice? Each individual person is a universe in themselves, so complex as to be beyond the full comprehension of all external persons, perhaps even themselves. Anything I say about Papa is a mere silhouette of the true shape. For everyone that knew him understands only one piece of the puzzle. So let me tell you about the piece that I knew. Out of all of Papa's grandchildren, I've probably spent the most one-on-one time with him. I can't remember when exactly it began. I guess I wanted to see a movie, but since my parents were busy, Papa took me to see it, and that just became routine. We were avid theater goers in an age of theater decline, buying tickets to the latest blockbuster out of even the mildest interest. Usually we saw Marvel movies with their consistent quality and universal appeal. When Papa got sick, he couldn't drive anymore, but that didn't stop me. I would visit him instead, sometimes with my sisters, and in the family room, we'd watch anything from 80s sci-fi classics to cult indie films. Papa was not a very conversational person. We discussed the films we watched together, and he'd listen to my long tirades about my various interests, but rarely had anything to add. He enjoyed my company, though, and looked forward to our time together. So, who was he really? I think Papa was someone who cared about people and sacrificed for them. As an OBGYN, he cared for his patients. As a husband, he cared for his wife, Sandy, and built a house with her. As a father, he cared for his children, who he raised and put through college. And when Papa could no longer care for himself, we cared for him in turn. And thanks to that, Papa was able to live his final 2 years in the comfort of his own home despite his condition. And that was the part of Papa that I knew. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm here along with the rest of my cousins to honor the memory of our Papa, the man who was not just a pillar in our family, but also a source of joy, wisdom, and support in all of our lives. I probably connected most with Papa through our love of sports. Papa, my father, and I all love watching Cleveland sports. We endured countless Browns and Indians games, experiencing the ups and downs together. I probably learned most of my football knowledge just from hearing him complain about what the Browns had done wrong in the previous play. While being able to connect, watching football together every Sunday was awesome. Papa made a much bigger impact in my life through attending my sports games. From my elementary school soccer matches all the way to my varsity baseball games, Papa and Mama were my steadfast cheerleaders. They even came all the way to Cooperstown, New York, just to watch me play in a baseball tournament. It didn't matter how the game was going or how I was playing, just seeing them in the stands, knowing that they were there for me, always gave me a sense of comfort and encouragement, and I'll forever be grateful for that. Papa, he was a man who just simply made the room better. Although he was stoic, he knew exactly when to step in with the perfect joke. No matter what our family was bickering about, he always found a way to make us all feel calm and reassured. And I don't think I've met anybody else in my life who could do this quite like Papa. I don't think it's possible to adequately describe how amazing of a person Papa was in words, but I do know that I'm so glad that I got the chance to live, learn, and bond with Papa. I'll forever cherish our time together.
Hi. Papa brought a lot of life into the world, both literally and figuratively. He had a great sense of humor and an easygoing demeanor. He was always able to stay cool and collected in tense situations and swoop in with a perfectly timed joke exactly when it was needed most. Papa and Mama always made a tremendous effort to be involved in the lives of all of their grandchildren. They always attended our sporting events, concerts, and plays. They also instilled us all with their appreciation for science and the arts by taking us to museums and shows at Playhouse Square and Severance Hall. Papa also had a great love of nature. He was always pointing out interesting and beautiful things in his own backyard. Papa was committed to his education throughout his entire life. Even in retirement, Papa attended classes and seminars and was always eager to discuss the new things he had learned. Papa stayed engaged with current events and was very involved in the community. He volunteered as a poll worker for many years and helped teach medical students at Case Western. I am proud of the impact that Papa had on the world throughout his professional life. He provided women with access to essential health care in a time when it was not guaranteed and helped pave the way for the rights we have today. Papa was an amazing teacher, leader, doctor, father, and grandfather, and though we will all miss him, I know that he will live on through the many qualities he has passed on to us. Last year, Papa and my mom sorted through piles of old photographs, newspapers, and documents and put together a timeline of his life. They compiled these things into a book of his life story, which he referred to as the Book of Bob. He did this because he wanted his grandchildren to carry on his legacy and family stories, and I knew that through us, the Book of Bob will never have an end.
Hi, I'm Emily Goldman, and I'm here to talk about two very serious subjects, snacks and newspaper comics. Papa loved snacks to the degree that it'd be impossible to have a snack without having to share with him, unless, of course, it was peanut butter stuffed pretzels. One of my favorite memories when I was staying with him was when I wanted to read the comic section of the newspaper. However, I'd always have to wait until he was done with the entire paper. He had to read it all in order, and even if I read them first and put the comics back in the correct position, he'd somehow know that they were disturbed. These may seem like small, everyday moments, but now whenever I do anything similar, let that be reading my favorite webcomic or sharing some snacks with friends, I'll always smile and be reminded of Papa.
Hi, I'm Andrew, Papa's fourth grandchild by age and ninth favorite. The last time all of us came to speak about our grandfather was almost 9 years ago to the day for his 80th birthday. It was a great night filled with 50 of his and Mama's closest friends and family to celebrate the man we all know and love. My siblings and cousins spoke of great memories they had of Papa. They spoke of nature walks, attending sporting events, and swimming in the pool together. I had decided to roast him. As everyone who has ever spoken with Papa about anything, whether it be the day's weather or Bugs Bunny's recent hijinks, knows, he had an incredible dry and pithy sense of humor. I'm sure everyone has heard of Papa's Tuesday lunch group, a classic gaggle of upper-middle-class East Siders. They were Romeos, retired old men eating out. It was an elite group of former lawyers and doctors whose turf ranged all the way from Corky and Lenny's to Jack's Deli. Their diverse membership ranged from old Jews to even older Jews. Papa was their de facto leader, organizing their weekly lunch and leading the gang into the continuing education lecture that had succeeded it. Papa was a man of routine, as everyone knows, and this lunch was one of his favorite parts of the week. Whenever we talked on the phone, we discussed the local happenings, where they went to lunch, and what that week's lecture entailed. Papa, in his usual fashion, loved to talk about what he had just learned, whether it be the Warren Court's legacy or the upcoming German Bundestag elections. I'm sure some of you shared my constant yearning to join this coterie, but after months of hinting, begging, and outright bribery through the form of changing out light bulbs, I was reluctantly granted a coveted invitation. The day had arrived. Lunch was at the pewter mug. Everyone had soup. I was finally able to bear witness to Papa in his natural habitat. Papa participated as he loved to, listening intently, waiting for the moment to strike with one-liners that would bring a 12-person discussion to a halt with raucous laughter. The other lunch groups at adjacent tables were clearly jealous of him, but I had a front row seat to his incredible performance. While one-liners were his bread and butter, he also dabbled in observational humor. A few years later, we read a study over breakfast in the Plain Dealer that said if you went 5 miles above the speed limit and no more, you weren't likely to get pulled over. As the man of science that he was, Papa had to test this theory for himself. Unlucky for me, I was chosen as the driver, assuming complete culpability. I have to give him credit for that one. We zoomed down Lander Road at a whopping 40 miles per hour. Every time I pressed a little too hard on the gas and hit 41, he would go, "Whoa, whoa, you're going to get us in trouble." While the cops never caught Pepper Pike's version of Butch and Cassidy in the Sundance Kid, we could have gotten into an accident because our eyes were watering from laughing so hard. Much like how he lived the rest of his life, he spoke carefully and precisely. Unlike many, he gave value to the words he chose, and people noticed. They listened with intent, and whether he was making a joke or telling me how I wasn't putting the light bulb in the right way, you always left a conversation with him a little smarter and better off. He was a gentle and giving grandfather and comedic counterpart. Thank you for all the great laughs.
My name is Samantha. I'm Papa's oldest grandchild. I have so many amazing memories with Papa. Playing in the pool at Mama and Papa's backyard, traveling to Iceland, Israel, France, and Germany, going around their house to wind all the grandfather clocks with a lot of guidance from Papa that was very specific. But my strongest memories are when Papa would take us into his metaphorical classroom. Papa loved to learn, and he loved to teach us even more. As kids, this was a mixed bag. Awesome, because he was always happy to take us to the Great Lakes Science Center or the Natural History Museum. But with the caveat that once we got there, we would have to read every single word on every single placard on every exhibit. If we tried to run ahead, we'd often be called back so that we could have a discussion about what we missed out on by not reading the placard. And discussion is maybe a mischaracterization. It was more like a pop quiz to make sure that we were really appreciating everything to its fullest potential. Although young me may have been less than thrilled, adult me realizes that it takes a special kind of person to see the importance in every detail and to be patient enough to share this with his big, crazy, impatient family. Papa was one of the smartest men I knew. He was always so curious about the world around him. He loved to read, to go to classes and lectures, to watch documentaries, anything that was educational. And he really did love to teach us all he knew and learned. I remember one Passover at my Aunt Lori and Uncle Steve's house. We were looking for the afikomen after dinner. Of course, Papa was in charge of hiding the afikomen and also in charge of doling out dollar coins to everyone afterwards. This particular Passover, I found the afikomen and eagerly lined up for my dollar coin. But before claiming my prize, I had to name the 3 bones of the inner ear. As a 12-year-old, of course, I had no idea. Thankfully, Papa was also incredibly understanding and informed me that the bones were the Malleus, Incus, and Stapes. 3 fun facts that I will always remember, but I confess I did Google for this eulogy. And yes, you still gave me my dollar coin. Lastly, I want to talk about another Passover memory. Every year, Papa would take all the grandkids out to walk around the neighborhood and look for signs of spring. We'd follow him down the driveway and look for daffodils blooming or birds chirping in the trees. It actually came out a couple of years ago that the real purpose of these nature walks was to get the kids out of the house while the adults finished cooking dinner. But while we went out on these walks with Papa, it was impossible to not be amazed by the changing world around us. His wonder and curiosity were infectious. These nature walks must have had a strong impact on us, as 3 of his granddaughters are now pursuing careers or degrees in ecology and the environment, where they study and marvel at the world around them, just like Papa taught us to. Thanks.
Psalm 121. Esainai elhei harim, me'ayin yavo ezri me'im Adonai. Ose shamayim va'aretz, al yitein lamot raglecha, al yanum shomerecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan. Shomer, shomer, Israel. Adonai shomerecha, Adonai tzilcha, al yad nevimecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra. Yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitcha uvohecha. Me'ata ve'ad olam. Me'ata ve'ad olam.
In what seems like a million years ago, before the existence of the internet or smartphones, there was an ancient mode of communication called the payphone. Payphones provided those away from home to remotely reach just about anyone around the world, provided you had the coins required to put the call through. When Bob Schwartz was away from home or work, he would carry a pocket full of dimes. That's how much a phone call cost at one time, to reach the office when he was on call. A doctor's life, especially the life of an OBGYN, was laden with unpredictability. The payphone made one reachable. So today, as we pay tribute to Robert H. Schwartz MD, there is a part of so many of us that which is still to reach Bob, perhaps long distance now, on a proverbial payphone, to count the ways in which he touched our lives, if we could still tell him that today. In this moment suspended from present reality, I imagine that we each hold a pocket full of dimes. So many dimes, one for every memory, every interaction, every moment when he made us laugh, when he practiced kindness from a deep reserve of patience and understanding, every time he asked a penetrating question, or when he made some sassy, irreverent comment. And each time he imparted unconditional love with his warmth and his reassuring smile. Could you imagine how many dimes we would need to tell him how much he meant to us to keep that call going? Today we deposit memories into this sacred space that holds a lifetime of interactions with our dear friend and beloved family man. Lucky for me, I have my own pocket full of dimes. I met Bob when I first arrived at Fairmount Temple in 2002, when we launched a new weekly study program on Wednesday mornings. The first text we explored was the classic rabbinic volume Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot includes some of Judaism's greatest hits, so to speak, maxims and adages. And after years of studying together, class participants chose the very same seat for that hour of learning. Bob and Sandy sat just to the left of me. I can see it in my mind's eye now. Bob was always engaged, bringing up relevant interpretations. Because I sat so close to Bob, I would even hear his nonverbal reactions. You know, that guttural, of something that we just read, or a ponderous and throaty, You know, that kind of gravelly Bob, as he considered a salient point. Bob was smart as a whip, and also one of the quirkiest people I came to know. Also quick, but very quirky. There were times when I wondered if Bob had any filter separating his thoughts from his words. In all honesty, he would at times share a thought that was not always relevant. In those moments, Sandy would often tip him off that he was going off topic. Bob, he was a bit... You know what I'm talking about. He was a bit of an ivory tower professor, sharing erudite thoughts, but also an illustrative and compelling teacher, as he would sometimes reveal stories from his practice. Needless to say, Bob was unpredictable, but entertaining. I was looking at all of the maxims from Pirkei Avot, and I thought this one might have fit him very well. Shammai said, "Make your Torah fixed. Say little and do much, and receive every person with a pleasant countenance." For Bob, Torah was anything that engaged his curiosity. He was a lifelong learner, a voracious reader, nonfiction and science fiction, often sharing what he was reading with others and his family and kids. He was a deep thinker. He wanted his children to know things. He wanted them to be curious. He wanted them to learn and grow, as you have already heard. When they were young and came to him with the question, "Can you help me?" his answer was usually, "Well, what do you think you should do?" He was the incessant teacher, even counseling the kids to not eat too much bread at the start of a meal, even when they were in France sitting before some of the world's most tasty gluten. He wanted them to know basic skills like how to balance a checkbook, change the oil for your car, or what to do when you got a flat tire. One time, Karen grudgingly signed up for Dad's Fix a Flat Tire 101 course. And he and the whole family sat in the garage scrutinizing Karen's abilities as she struggled to change that tire. But it didn't matter how much he tried to drill these lessons through. His tenderness and kindness were always there. Bob was a man of routine, as has been said. First thing he did when he got home from work was check the mail. And you were not to retrieve the mail before he fetched it. If you did, you were grilled to make sure every piece of mail was still there. Eventually, after settling in at home, he would engage with the kids. Shabbat dinner was something that was important and sacred. During vacations, they would take trips to Cedar Point and long drives to Florida in that incomprehensibly diesel-powered station wagon, where they had trouble finding gas at one point, with, of course, the way back. There were trips to Zanesville to visit Sandy's family farm, and bigger excursions to California and beyond in Israel, as has been said. Of course, Sandy and Bob traveled on their own. Both heady and curious, the two were a great match for adventure. They met when a sorority friend asked Sandy, a senior in undergrad, to meet someone she knew. It was Bob, a second-year medical student at OSU. The two each had something the other found appealing. For Sandy, Bob was in medical school. For Bob, Sandy had a cool convertible. They were engaged after 6 months of dating. Even beyond the fact that he was to be a doctor, Bob was a gentleman. And as Sandy put it, he was a nice person, just like his mother. They married on June 14th, 1959. Bob interned at Mount Sinai Hospital, and soon they brought 4 wonderful children into the fold: Stephen, Karen, Laura, and Lisa. Each of them holds special memories of being with their dad, Stephen carrying many of his dad's indelible qualities even to this day, enjoyed attending Browns games with his dad. Of course, before they got to the stadium, they went on rounds together for that one last time so Bob could be freed up to go to the game. Karen remembers going on those rounds with him, and Laura shared fond memories of her dad on her wedding day, those memories of getting dressed up. And Lisa shared a love of reading with him and an appreciation for similar genres of that interest. And when their spouses came along, Bob and Sandy opened up their hearts and home to Lori, David, and Neil. They were treated as if they were their own kids. They all witnessed a man of great integrity and stature, born to Leo and Sadie. Sadie was the only one of her siblings born in the States, in Selma, Alabama, by way of Galveston, Texas, essentially the Ellis Island of the West. Bob and his sister Susan were raised in Cleveland Heights. Bob was a family man through and through. Following the far too early death of his sister Susan, he remained an active uncle in the lives of her sons, who mourn him today with the greater extended family. Bob was a champion of our country's democratic principles and strove for the rights of all. He was the medical director of Planned Parenthood, and one year the Cleveland Press ran an article in 1973, the same year the passage of Roe v. Wade. The title of the article, "Abortionist, Is He Killer or Helper?" In it, Bob matter-of-factly answered the reporter's questions, explaining why he supported women's reproductive rights and the times when it's important to do so. More than that, Bob sought to volunteer his time mentoring medical students at Case, giving himself to long election days as a poll worker, and working with core community service to rehabilitate those who were charged to do that service. The rabbis said, "Al tifrosh min hatzibur," do not separate from the community. Bob never did. And today, we are beneficiaries of his generosity of spirit. Not long ago, seeing Bob's decline, Lori put together a memory book, as has been mentioned, celebrating her father-in-law's life. Yes, that book of Bob is filled with photos and memories for families to cherish for years to come. This labor of love found Lori spending precious time with Bob, learning about his origins and reaching out to family members near and far. Of course, all the kids and grandkids would make visits to see Papa. He relished having family around him and yes, Joey, watching those movies together. Derwin, Bob's outstanding aide, became an extension of the family as he made sure to get Bob up and moving, even if that meant Derwin doing most of the physical exertion, while Bob happily rolled down the street in his wheelchair. Derwin said that he automatically loved Bob and talked about the special report they shared together, hanging out, watching those movies, laughing a lot. Bob came to the conclusion about his aide. He's my brother. As he began to decline, Bob's family pledged to keep him home. He relished being in the center of the action, equipped with a bell that he could ring at any time, and he used it sometimes for his amusement, just to beckon people to come to him. Everyone played along. He had his routine, and the people he loved surrounding him to his very last breath. Sandy, you have been such a champion of your husband throughout these days. You have been through so much, and yet I know you wouldn't have had it any other way than to be there every day with your husband, with wonderful Bob. You have shepherded him through this process, made it easier for him to endure, and all the while, you have held your family together, and they have supported you. What a beautiful example of the meaning of family. Bob was gifted with loving family and friends, including my father-in-law, Dr. Phil Weiss, who was one of those Romeos meeting with him on those Tuesdays. He will be missed by Phil, by me, by so many whose lives were enriched by his example. We were truly gifted with Bob. I still have a pocket full of dimes at the ready, and somewhere, Bob is still on call, his legacy secured. The stories will be free-flowing. Zichrono livracha. May his memory be an enduring blessing. And let us say, Amen. I invite you now to rise for the chanting of El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer.
Malei Rachamim, Shoheina Bamromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezar Arakia, Mazirim, Et Nishmat, Roy ben Hershel ben Lev Sarah, Shechalach le'olamo. Bal Rachamim yastirechu beseiter kenafav le'olamim. V'yitzror b'yitzror hachayim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato. V'yanuach b'shalom. על משכבו ונאמר Amen.
May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Bob's memory be for us a blessing, and may we never let the light of his love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all his worthy and righteous deeds, that his memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and our destination, our beginning and our end. May Bob's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share not be severed in sorrow. May he rest in peace, and we say, Amen.
As we turn to the conclusion of our service, we ask that you remain standing for just another few moments. I want to share on behalf of Cantor Sarah Sager and Rabbi Rob Nosenchuk and Rabbi Ellie Mulbaum, the clergy team at Fairmount Temple is holding you close. We're thinking of you, holding you, Sandy, and Stephen and Lori, Karen, Laura, David, Lisa and Neil, and of course, all of Bob's precious grandchildren, Samantha, Andrew, Emily, Max, Joseph, Abigail, Molly, Celia, and Ben, at which many of those B'nai Mitzvah I have attended, Cantor Lappin as well, and we saw Bob's smile and pride evidenced on those days, those beautiful days, in addition to all his grandchildren and their special simchas. I know Bob's spirit will be present at Sam's upcoming wedding in New York. As we conclude this service, we are going to move to the interment in Mayfield Cemetery. And following cemetery, the family will receive friends at the residence of Sandy, 2789 Belgrave Road. That's in Pepper Pike, 2789 Belgrave. Immediately following interment, they will be sitting today until 4:30 p.m., Saturday from 6 to 9, and Sunday from 11 to 5. Today until 4:30, Saturday from 6 to 9, and Sunday from 11 to 5. Contributions are suggested in Bob's honor to go to the Planned Parenthood of Greater Ohio. Thank you. Yar Bitseni, Nemeno Hodian, Pileni Nafshia Shobed, Yankheni, the Mad Mitzere, Shema. Dan Elef, Samadas.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be a good idea. Yeah, I'm going to get my plate. Okay.